This is kind of what we're kind of out of what we can do with speakers, so we're trying to figure out what else we can do with using the same type of acoustic air pressure stuff to be able to trick what we can do in an environment to transmit a signal.
All right, almost Dr. Castro. So there's this thing in venues that I keep hearing about, which is array beamforming. And I'm very curious to understand, what is it and how does it work?
They're so cool. So the idea here is that you have basically, instead of one big speaker and or a speaker and like a spreader that kind of spreads the sound out, which is what you would see in like most speakers, to keep costs down, right? One thing, two. It's basically a whole bunch of little speakers in like this big matrix array, right? And what they do is that they're basically shooting some sound this way and also some sound this way, so that way it cancels it across a line. So instead of a sound wave kind of going outward like it normally does, it spreads out naturally, right? This one's basically shooting an inverse of that one to say, hey, stop it, stay on that side, and basically cancels it out so that way it does not propagate to another side, which means that you can actually set up a beam directly in one spot or to two spots or all the way like across, like 3 wide or something like that. And it's a really cool technology that it's a new, interesting technology. It's not really that new. It's been around for at least 10 years or so. But the fact that it's kind of getting stormed today, I think is because you can then have two groups of people side by side experiencing two completely different streams of audio, right? So this person could be hearing someone speak in English, and these groups of people could be hearing someone speak in Spanish. It's kind of cool.
So I guess curiosity to that, if something is inversing while it's also pushing out audio, wouldn't that be doubling the air pressure within the same space?
So here's a criticism. Theoretically, it's a really cool idea. In practice, it's really hard to do because it's not a perfect cancellation. It's not a perfect phase out, especially when you're giving the user or the audio engineer at the venue the option to choose exactly what you want to do. It's never going to be like a perfect. It's always going to be feathered off a little bit. And people right in the middle of that feathering, it's probably got to be brutal because you're getting both signal coming this way, like, okay, cool, the normal speaker, but you're also getting signals like canceling it out and sucking it out from you at the same time. So it's like these places in the middle, and it depends on how intense that original array is at the front of the venue. It depends on how they do it and how they set it up. There's ways to avoid it. Obviously, you put it like an exit row, it's fine. You're not gonna be in the exit row for the whole time. But if you're trying to cut it in the middle of where people are, some people are not gonna be having a very good time. And possibly if you only have one system at the front, it could be a whole line of the whole venue not having a good time.
So I guess out of curiosity, isn't this kind of the same problems that like spatial audio has in essence, that like experiences that you're trying to centralize into one source, like if you're trying to do things like spatial audios and like trick someone with DSPs and all this kind of stuff, right? Like trick their brain, how they're hearing stuff with the signal processing. It requires a centralization. I'm just giving it a reference point. Like it's not a one-to-one, but I'm just giving like a context point. Like if everybody's experienced like Adobe Atmos and they walk in a room, right? There's one part where it's just mind-blowing.
Right.
I go one step to the right and I'm like, this sounds distorted, it sounds off.
Yeah, I mean, it's a point and shoot, right? If you point and shoot and then you're not where I pointed, then you're not gonna get shot, which depending on what's shooting at you, it might be a good thing. But if this case, if it's a sound thing that you're wanting to hear, if you're not within that predestined thing, I mean, the way to go around that, I guess, is like to continuously watch somebody and like move as they move, or have something that's generating sound on them versus at a point, right? So you point at a person versus point at a point in space. I'm sure there's ways to probably mitigate some of these issues that they're not as bad, but this is kind of what we're kind of out of what we can do with speakers. So we're trying to figure out what else we can do with using the same type of acoustic air pressure stuff to be able to trick what we can do in an environment to transmit a signal.
Got it. So, I mean, nonetheless, Array beamforming opens up new avenues of how you can create unique shared experiences within the space, because you can have 3 different experiences all within, rows of each other. So that's obviously very fascinating, but it does open up new types of problems potentially within the venue space. And also it does sound like it requires a way of rethinking how you're, I feel like this is a lot easier to deploy if it's a new venue space, right? Because you can create those things like exit rows and those subsections. So
or separation between groups of places that you
So
want to cover,
that makes a lot of sense since there's a lot of new venues being built correctly.
That's right.
So this seems like a great option compared to what are the comparative options today, but
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily solve every problem, but it does open up new avenues.
It's an expensive solution, that's for sure. As most technology is, but yeah, it's. I mean, the fact that some people are going to try it and move in that direction is so cool because then you're still condensing and kind of simplifying. Hey, I want this, instead of saying I want this speaker to play one thing and this speaker to play the other thing, and it's like conflicting in there. You're actually getting that delineation. Now, one of the other issues of that is that there is a physical limit of how they can reproduce, which means you need to have a big system in order to reproduce a big wave. The wave is coming across the whole system. It's kind of being replicated off of it. So if it's a small system, like you can't just get one and then expect that you're going to have a great experience and you're going to have a great experience in this big venue. It's like, hey, you're going to have very high frequencies be split, and you're going to have very high frequencies be split, and then all the low frequencies are going to be still mixed in with everybody. So even if you're listening to house music, you're going to hear the thump of house music like it's in a room next to you or something like that. But then all the crisp stuff is going to kind of get you in the ears, but then maybe not the actual content of like the vocals and stuff like that. So in order to get that feeling, you need to have a really big array in order to reproduce the entirety of the large low frequency waves that you would expect to have a clear delineation of signal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Love the innovation, but obviously there's still a lot of things that have to be considered when it comes to the world of audio.
Yeah.
Awesome.